You are listening to The Critical Social Worker, a revolutionary storytelling podcast. I'm your host, Professor Ace, and with the support of the University of Alaska Fairbanks Department of Social Work, we gather voices of revolutionary social workers from around the world, organizers, healers, artists, and educators, people who carry stories that connect us, challenge us, and remind us what it means to be human. Each episode is an offering, a chance to slow down, listen deeply, and feel the ground beneath your feet. Come as you are, stay as long as you need, and remember, no matter your pain, somebody, somewhere feels the same. Welcome to The Circle. Dr. Daniel Min is a physical therapist and somatic healer who blends movement, energy work, and trauma-informed care to guide people back to wholeness, integrating body, mind, and spirit while restoring the nervous system regulation and supporting deep vitality. If you find something meaningful here, the best way that you can support this work is simple. Like, comment, share the episode, and subscribe to our channels. And if you want to connect, ask questions, or be a part of the conversation, please reach out, because I'd love to hear from you. All right. Welcome to another episode of The Critical Social Worker, a revolutionary storytelling podcast. You know, I always try to remember what episode I'm on, and I always forget right before we start, absent-minded like that. I think it's episode 74. But I'm very happy, very pleased to be joined here by Dr. Daniel Min. How's it, Daniel?
Wow. Just another beautiful day in Hawaiian, and a beautiful day wherever you all are listening in, and just grateful and honored to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's nice just to have somebody here live, if you know what I mean. Usually we're spread out across the globe, across the continent, and I think that that's a privilege that we have in today's modern world with the technology. You know what I mean? I can do a podcast or have a guest speaker in my class from Africa, for all that matter. But sometimes we don't know our neighbors anymore.
Absolutely. And it's a really ironic feeling because, I have so many memories here. Just to give audience a little bit of a background, the way we connected was through this opportunity of sharing our space as a rental property here. And it's funny how the universe aligns, and it was just a few weeks before finding the space and how the connection, the beautiful family to now be able to welcome into our home and make it yours and create lasting memories here, just where our three little kids were able to grow up and have the backyard space, and just to be able to carry on this beautiful energy and to raise your kids here. It was such a grateful feeling to be able to pass it on. And I was in there using the restroom before coming out here and just got really emotional because of so many memories I had with my little ones. We moved here when they were 2, 3, and 5, and then 5 years here. So yeah,
well, I have nothing to express other than gratitude for my situation. I think I was mentioning to you before, I've never lived in a house for very long. Since I was a kid, I was always moving from place to place to place to place. And then I think in transitioning into adulthood, it made me think that that somewhere else there's always something better. The grass is always going to be greener, and sometimes that could be true. But I've been moving around forever, and I think it's very interesting to talk with you here because there's the term landlord, right? And I've rented my whole life. I've never owned a property before, and not my parents haven't either, for all that matter. And so we lived moving around all the time. You have a lot of different relationships with people that own the home that you live in, if that makes sense. And some are better and some are worse. And I've lived in like what I felt like was the slumlord in Honolulu to, like a guy in Alaska that was, just not very nice. Let's put it that way. Not very, didn't care very much about our needs. And then I've had experiences in the middle, but then when it comes to you, it feels more like, it feels more relational, like it's a relationship that was forged, and that, although you own the home and we're renting it, it has more meaning behind it. There's more connection, more connectivity behind it all. And you mentioned the, energy. It seemed like a huge energy transfer that was kind of brought on and manifested by both sides. Yeah.
Absolutely. And we were looking for the right people. We wanted to be able to make sure that it was being fostered, taken care of, but to harbor a young family like ours because of the experience we had, raising three kids here in their earlier years. And it's a beautiful area here, and I don't take it for granted waking up here in Hawaii. To be able to pass that along is just another blessing. And yeah, I love the connection and relationship, but I felt like there were moments where I was like, how's the MacNuts going? Like maybe bothering you guys too much
No.
to check the back, and this is parts of the fruits of the labor that we have here. And to have like about 10 MacNut trees and to have some fruits in the backyard, it truly is to be able a blessing to have, and to be able to nourish our bodies with what Mother Nature provides here in our backyard. And I hope you're enjoying them. You know,
Yeah, the macadamia nuts have been a pleasant surprise. I don't remember how I think I learned that those were macadamia nut trees when I walked around with you. I don't think that I remembered that from visiting the place,
Mm.
and it's just become like a family activity. You get to go gather them, you got to shell them, you got to the cracking's my part because it's hard work. Um, Crack them and then figure out a way that to either eat them raw or to cook them, and it becomes like a family thing. And we're thinking about mailing them to everybody during the holiday
Mm.
season to say show our gratitude towards the people in our lives spread around the world, and pass on the gifts of that nature has given us out there. Because you say there's 10 trees, but there's a million nuts. I
Yeah.
mean, go out there with all the kids and you think you can pick up a lot of them, but then they're back. um, there's a million of them out there right now.
By the way, I bought a cracking them one at a time. It's you know how it feels. So I bought like a winding one. I'll
Yeah,
definitely let you borrow it as we get through ours.
it's funny. What's up to the people in the chat anyways? Hey Viviana, hey Renee, hey Monica. And I was just in Alaska with Monica. We were in Anchorage um, presenting at a conference, but I brought a big old bag of mac nuts, and me and her husband were cracking so many of them trying to make some chocolate macadamia nuts for this gathering that we had that we broke it.
Ooh.
So then we were stuck there without a it was hard enough as it was, and then he somehow went outside and broke all the rest with a rock. So we still got our chocolate macadamia nuts.
Gotta do what you gotta do.
Yeah, well, everybody didn't have a cracker at one day. I had to be
Yeah.
getting it out somehow. I know the rats get them out somehow.
Yeah. 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 You gotta be mindful there. But wow, they're so amazing. They're such an amazing treat. They're healthy. Again, straight from source.
Yeah, Alice says her Hawaiian friend said that their family uses a hammer and a pillowcase. I can see that.
Mm.
I think when I'm cracking them, I think because even sometimes it gets a little sloppy with the cracker. So I wonder how you contain them from going everywhere when you're doing it in whether with a rock or a hammer or something like that. Because those shells are hard. I didn't expect it to be that difficult to crack them. And it's not even how much power you use, because you could squeeze till your temple explodes. It's more like getting them in the right way and pumping it at the right time.
But now you're giving me ideas. Now I feel like it's gonna be quicker with a hammer and a pillowcase and just going.
Yeah, and then collecting them. Yeah. But anyways, like you said, it's a blessing to be in Hawaii. And one of the things that is interesting about Hawaii is that it still is a land of abundance, but at one time it was actually utilized as a land of abundance where folks lived off the land, and that was, there were no imports and things like that. And imports and exports can be good in some ways, but Hawaii imports 90% of its food. And we were talking this in the talking circle yesterday a little bit about when I was in Oahu. They got the first Wendy's, and everybody was all that's the conversation was everybody was excited about Wendy's, and then there's a big line going down the block and around the way in Kailua for the first Wendy's. And I'm thinking to myself, I used to like Wendy's, but I mean, doesn't that just make you more like everyone else and takes away the authenticity of what Hawaii has? And isn't it say something that if we're importing 90% of the food that we eat here, but yet we live in this land of abundance where I often see fruit just hanging and rotting sometimes. They cut down all the coconuts in public areas, just things like that.
Mm.
You know what I'm saying? It seems like that Hawaii I think the people that are involved in it, are doing great, but I think that as a whole, as a state, even as an island, that we could do a better job at utilizing the resources that are here in a reciprocal way that benefits everybody. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And I didn't know that about 90% of imports. And yeah, we have the space, we have the land, we have, if we could utilize the leadership, to be able to come up with a plan that's sustainable, that is giving back to our aina and our land, by creating communities where we foster that type of cultural development of sharing food. It's such an
Mhm.
energetic connection you have, not with the land, but also with your families and your loved ones. And Mother Nature, what they provide for us is all you need. It
Mhm.
really is our medicine. We don't need to synthetically create anything else. We can get our vitamins, minerals, and nutrients straight from source, and locally produced sources, because the connection we have just to be able to be around the plants and trees and fruits that are grown here, there is a genetic exchange just by breathing near them, just by spitting or whatever, saliva exchange and energy exchange. That food, that plant, those trees, they provide what you exactly need, instead of having to ship anything from across the country or across an ocean. So man, there are problems that we should be able to figure out with creative solutions, to keep it here and to be able to provide for our communities. So I agree.
Yeah, and I think, for those tuning in from Alaska too, I think it's very relevant that Alaska and Hawaii have a lot of similarities and a lot of differences. Alaska's huge, Hawaii's pretty small, all things considered, although this is a pretty big island. In certain places in Alaska, folks that have been fishing the salmon
Mhm.
for time upon time are not allowed to do so anymore. And it's largely a result of, overfishing commercially, tourism, things like that. And I've always looked at it the same way as I do Hawaii to a degree. It's the problems are a little bit different, but tourism can be good in some ways. But when is enough enough? Because if it always has to be more, and there always has to be more to meet the needs, then and then there's less of everything else. You know what I'm saying? Whether that's the food that we're um, harvesting and sharing here, or whether the fish in the water in Alaska. It's like you say we have to be imaginative, and that's true, but sometimes it doesn't even take that much imagination. It takes an ability to let go of the standard that we've set of progress upon growth upon growth upon
Mhm.
growth that's not sustainable, if you know what I mean. And it takes away, in order to have that growth, you have to eliminate other things as well. People aren't going to
Mm.
buy your food if they're subsisting, if
Yeah.
you know what I mean. And so it seems not a cultural thing, like as far as like native Hawaiian culture or Alaska native culture per se. It's a capitalist culture
Yeah,
type of thing.
absolutely. You know, it comes down to the bottom line, sadly to say. Um, and that's where we get to, the segue of revolutionary, right?
Mm-hmm.
That word and what you folks embody on this podcast with the people you bring. It's old systems that do not raise the frequency and humanity's potential, right? So let's take, for example, the Food and Drug Administration.
Mm-hmm.
We've been misinformed or misaligned, for example, on the consumer products of what we should be eating, on the what's on the shelves, what's being sold, what's being provided to our children, starting off at such a young age with habits that, ultimately can be controlled in some sense throughout the exposure that people can bring. But man, we can do a better job, you know, and to eat naturally sourced fruits, plants, some animals, you know, I think is going back to simplicity, going back to nature, and to try and stay away from processed foods, or
Mm-hmm.
as a holistic practitioner as well, where we talk about diet and nutrition, and it's really keeping our system and our vessel as clean as we can, like, and to for us to be able to heal our bodies on a natural state, it's to keep it as alkaline as possible. So foods that are raising our acidity or lowering our pH levels really creates a system for us where diseases can occur, parasites can thrive. We're not optimally functioning at our best selves through energy, through mental focus and clarity. So, again, like I said, foods are medicine, herbs, plants. These are what allows us to feel in such an optimum way, from our physical bodies, our mental bodies, even our emotional bodies, and spiritual bodies. Yeah, it's food is essential. It's what we do to nourish ourselves. We want to keep our vessel as clean and sacred as possible with the foods we introduce in our bodies. So, and I think as a whole, you know, it's not to shame anyone. It's not to guilt anybody with their choices that they're making, but to empower them that there are alternative and conscious, choices out there for themselves. But with so much humility, like that's just their journey. And again, not to shame anybody, but if they truly respect and love their vessels, that they can make these better choices for themselves and for their families.
Yeah, and I think that's important. Even having empathy for other folks that make different decisions or at different points in their lives, and having empathy for ourselves when we don't make the right decisions as well. Because let's be real, like eating healthy is hard in the modern world.
Mm,
First of all, I think you're just average person, and I could even just speak me in past years. Um, you don't even know because you're so propagandized
mm,
to it being the normal to eat that kind of food, whether it's what you see in the grocery store when you walk in, when you're um, tired and you don't have much time and you're hungry and your kids are hungry and you're driving
mm.
home. What do you smell? KFC and McDonald's. There's no doubt about it. That's what you're going to smell as you're driving by. It's quick, it's fast, it's cheap. You know
Yep.
what I'm saying? They make options like Kraft macaroni and cheese, ramen noodles, all, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. But
Yeah.
all those kind of things are just put there in the mainstream and everything else is made so hard that you're going to take that easy option often, even when it goes against your own self-interest. And I think to further that is that something I learned recently was that, well, we all know about the problems of the tobacco companies and how they used to advertise to folks and,
Mm,
putting more nicotine in there, getting people addicted, branding and all that stuff. Well, when that paradigm started to shift a bit for the United States, and people started to say, okay, cigarette smoking is not healthy, and we've seen that decline. You can't smoke in public spaces and all of that. Well, many of the tobacco giants got out of the tobacco field, and they purchased the food companies. So
mm,
what you're getting from the food companies, they're using the same devices, the same measures, the same manipulation tactics
mm,
to get you to buy into it like people bought into cigarettes. So when you walk into the grocery store, for example, and you see what you see there on whatever aisle that they put out there, what I'm saying is that it's more than just even like looking at the ingredients or more about looking past the processed food. It's looking past all of the deception
mm.
and the way that we've been hoodwinked to think that things are what is normal is not normal, if that makes sense. Um, you know, it's very hard just to go and find things from the source these days. Here in Hawaii, it's a little easier. You got farmers markets, things like that. You got locally sourced meat and things like that. But most people don't even use it. Most people are still, like I said, buying that imported stuff from the grocery store that's owned by the same people that owns the grocery store in Los Angeles.
Right. Yeah. Again, kind of going back to, everyone's on their own journey, and not to criticize anyone, but there are alternative options out there to do the best you can. And it's not making these huge drastic changes. It's one little thing at a time. It's just through education, through um, modeling just a different choice. And, by just doing things little by little, you get to a point where you start to, you know, create a lifestyle that is a healthier choice. Um, but with that said, I eat foods that may not be the best for me at times.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay, because the relationship again is huge. It's that energetic connection we have with food, and the thought of being able to even transmute the food in a sense of the energy by giving it love, by letting you know that this is going to nourish your body. It kind of goes back to the placebo effect, where you start to let your brain and mind know that it's okay. There are people who've eaten crap all their lives and had, you know, had recreational choices of smoking and drinking, but for whatever reason lived to be over 100 years old without many other chronic illnesses and lived a joyous, happy life because of the relationship that they had with it. So going back, it's not about shaming anyone, it's not about making anyone feel bad. It's about, if you choose to have this relationship with food and eat something that we know may not be the best, that it's okay, that you get to enjoy it. It's part of the pleasures of life, and know that you are doing the best, right? And not to shame yourself while eating it, but to actually feel great while eating it. And that's the difference too. But yeah, connection with food.
Yeah, one of the things I struggle with, Daniel, with food, but with almost all aspects of wellness for myself, is and I'm not like this in other ways in my life too, but I'm a hills and valleys kind of guy. But like, I'll be feeling good and get in this routine where I'll be doing yoga and lifting weights like pretty much every day, just eating the best food ever, and I'll feel great. And then, excuse me, I'll take a vacation or something, and I'll think, oh, I'll just let these things slide a little bit. And then the next thing I know, I'm been home for 3 months and I'm just on a slide, if you know what I mean. I don't maintain that consistency.
Yeah.
You have any thoughts about that? Like, how do you
Yeah.
maintain your consistency?
Yeah. I know those slides, I know those feelings, and that is something we can't control, especially when it comes to when we introduce sugar into our bodies. It's really sugar and the effects that it has in our neurochemical makeup. So once you start to introduce sugar, it's like a drug, right? Like you see it in kids when you give sugar to
Mm-hmm.
kids. And I remember, and some kids respond to sugar differently. They may react much more abrupt or have a more sensitive reaction than others. But even as adults, and think about introducing it at such a young age, that's now, fostered throughout their growing years into an adulthood. But sugar is, what they found in certain studies is, giving sugar to a kid is like giving heroin to an adult. They found within the brain scan all these areas in your brain just being highlighted for pleasure. And then so you're going to want more of that. And so sugar, I think, once you start introducing it, you're going to have some of these withdrawal responses for a few days. And then it's that cascading effect of wanting more and wanting more. But then if you kind of detox through that period, depending on how, chronic this need and dependency was with certain foods and sugar, it might be longer, but generally, if you're pretty clean, within a few days, you'll notice you won't have those cravings. But it is like going through that initial, like, curbing sensation.
Yeah, and I have a good example of that, I think. Um, I remember way back when I was a kid, I went to go see a dermatologist. My mom sent me to a dermatologist. I had acne, and he's like, "Well, you drinking soda?" I don't remember exactly what he said, but and I was telling him, "Well, if you just stop doing that, the acne will go away." And I was like, in my mind, it was impossible. That was something that was unobtainable and ridiculous for you to say that I would need to stop drinking soda. And you fast forward many years later, and have this my little family here, and we don't ever have soda or anything like that in the house anymore. Actually, as a family, I don't think we ever have. But we would have a rule that we could drink soda when we went to the movie theater, and so we'd go to the movie theater, get a popcorn and a big Coke and share it or whatever. As time passed, and the less and less that soda was in our lives, the less we wanted it. And matter of
Mm.
fact, we would order it at the movie theater, and people would be like, "It doesn't really taste good. I don't
Yeah.
want it." And then you drink the water instead. So it's just a natural occurrence. And now, for the most part, soda doesn't sound good to me at all. So that's a pretty big transition from not thinking it's obtainable. I mean, it's not possible to stop drinking or to eliminating that from my life, to today it's just gone. And I didn't ever make a hard choice to say, hey, I'm absolutely quitting soda, I don't want to do that. It was like a recognition of how much. I saw a video of the CEO or somebody from Coke being confronted, and they were like, do you know how many
Mm.
packets of sugar are in a Coke? And they pulled out a movie theater. This is not even a can, this is a movie theater Coke, and there's like 45 packets of sugar in there. So if you try to mix 45 packets of sugar in your coffee, it's going to be a tarry mess. So they got to use some real science to get all that sugar
Yeah.
into the Coca-Cola, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so I guess the point is that, to that I just, by being aware, even casually aware, it made me drink less. And it happened with other foods too. I'd see something and I'd think, okay, I'm far from perfect, but I would look at it and think twice about it. And it made a transition for myself to where I ate less and less and less of. What advice do you have for folks that are trying to make some kind of a shift?
Well, again, like just one choice at a time. If I had to really, in terms of a full spectrum of nutrition or diet, I think look at your cabinets, look around your household. And if I had to, just off the top of my head, kind of go through a list of things that I think could be the most harmful things in your kitchen, um, would be ultra highly processed seed oils. That'd be number one. So your canola oils, your vegetable oils, palm oils, you know. And so we can use alternative choices like coconut oil, butter, beef tallow, or even olive oil or avocado oil. And that's one. The juices, like you mentioned, the high fructose, high sugary content liquids, they're like immediately going into their bloodstream, immediately going into their brain, as opposed to even eating something where it needs to slowly get introduced. But soda, and then even if you choose, um, what do you call it, like the diet types of sodas, and don't get me wrong, I drank my fair share of sodas and juices.
Mm-hmm.
But do I now, am I conscious about it? Will I have it here and there? Sure. But am I aware that it doesn't serve my body a higher purpose? And again, it's not about shaming or guilting anyone because my kids have drank them too. It's part of maybe when they go to parties, but they just know that, hey, mom or dad believe this way in a certain food. And, as you grow up, you're going to be making your own conscious choices. So we can only role model instead of trying to tell them what to do. But the other thing in the household would be, so ultra highly processed food oils. We have liquid sugar in a sense, and anything processed. I mean, if you're looking at your ingredient list, I wouldn't say anything processed, but if you're looking at the back of a label and you see a bunch of chemicals that you can't pronounce, that might not be the best for you. Um, if I had to choose top three things, that'd be the best things that you can do little by little to start to choose an alternative choice and replace it with something a little better.
Yeah, absolutely. And one kind of funny rule, not necessarily a rule, but a way of looking at a lens that we use is that if we look on the back of something and we really can't pronounce it or we don't know what it is, then we should at least figure it out first. But I mean, you could look at, like one time my kids had this little packet of cookies and you looked at the back and it had a warning that it might affect their behavior, first of all. And then I looked at the ingredients. How did they pack so many of these things that I don't know into something? And so essentially what you're not getting is a chocolate chip cookie or butterscotch ice cream. You're getting a chemical concoction. That's not necessarily our fault because we didn't know that. We just want the butterscotch ice cream, right?
Mm.
But you're putting all these things into our body that, like as you mentioned, cause diseases, they cause cancer, they cause all kinds of problems for ourselves. And we often look elsewhere for it when we don't realize that it's those kind of things is what's getting to us. You know what I mean? The body keeps the score.
Yes, absolutely. Kind of going back to alternative choices in kids and body keep score, I think it's a great segue. In terms of healthier choices for kids, one thing that I started to implement and give to my kids is uh, these alternative choices of hydrated. It's a support uh, drink that you can use, no sugar, no calories, with all the minerals you need, and it comes from a uh, company called Make Wellness. And I gave you a care package there with some of yours, but these peptides have these two support drinks that you can use as a dissolvable packet and use as a mix and shake and drink. So this is what my kids drink instead of Gatorade. Again, when you look at things like Gatorade, there's artificial food colors, there's again chemicals in there, there's a bunch of sugar, and so this is what they replace that with, and I send that to them uh, for them to drink daily. But yeah, the body keeps score, and that's an amazing book. it actually makes me think about another book that kind of coincides with that called Molecules of Emotion, where uh, this Dr. Candace B. Pert, I believe, she started to study peptides and started to study them in a sense of uh, how our cells are communicating with one another to enhance optimal function, whether it's energy, whether it's mental clarity, whether it's focus. And what we found out, or what she found out, was a lot of her research was being suppressed. And then it wasn't able to advance
Hmm.
because we're going to be able to now find cures for chronic illnesses that sugar and other diseases have caused, or other um, lifestyle choices have been caused. And so she also found out that the book Molecules of Emotion, we think, can you imagine if you could create a drink or create some form of natural peptide that allows, again, the best cellular communication for optimum function, but one specifically to even open your heart or release your emotions. And with that, kind of going back to the body keeps score, when you hold suppressed emotions, that also can create a lot of issues in your life down the line. And to be able to release that, to be able to transmute that, to be able to forgive and release any negative emotions of anger or bitterness or resentment or fear, and to be able to release in a way where it empowers you and allows your body to cleanse any of this negative energy so that you can live a life that is peaceful, that is abundant, out of truth and love and openness. So the body keeps score in so many different ways, through foods, through diets, through experiences that you hold on to, um, and trauma.
Yeah, I think so many of us in the modern world are walking around with trauma, and it's affecting our bodies, it's affecting our minds, our spirits, our brains, and we're not connecting those dots, if you know what I'm saying. I know when you say that storing emotions, negative emotions, and things in your body. I'd never even considered such a thing. Actually, I think I had some guy talk to me about that 20 years ago, and I thought he was a kook. I was like, I don't know about all that. Um, but as I progressed through my life and I started practicing yoga and being a little bit more aware and starting to let things go, what I found is that I stored a hell of a lot of negative energy, negative emotions in my hips and in my shoulders. And as a kid, I always just attributed it to genetics or something, but I couldn't sit, when they'd say everybody go sit in a circle and cross-legged.
Mm,
I couldn't do it, and it would make me uncomfortable, and I'd have to lean back.
mm,
And all the way into adulthood, I'd find myself like trying to sit on bleachers without a back or something, like backrest or sitting cross-legged, and I just couldn't do it. And then, like I said, just practicing yoga, but also addressing, and essentially just letting go certain things that I've been holding on to for so long. Now, like my hips just started to loosen up dramatically. It affected my sleep. I can sleep in different positions. And then where I'm finding it in the present day, I think I've released a lot of it from my hips. But when I get agitated or aggravated, I hold it up here in my shoulders and my
mm.
chest, if
Yeah,
that makes sense. And that's a present thing that I'm still kind of trying to work through.
it's amazing. And you probably have a really great yoga teacher to to follow.
All my yoga teachers been on DVD
Oh,
or streaming video.
oh, okay.
I've only been to one or two actual, live sessions. But Alicia, although we don't necessarily practice yoga together all the time, when we both kind of got into it, we did it together. And now you know, she's the ultimate yogi,
Yeah,
who's practicing daily, not just in getting up and getting on the mat, but in the way that she lives her life. And it's just been a great influence on me in that regard as well. It's easier when you have people around you
mm,
that are embodying the things that you need and want as well.
absolutely. Yeah, like these emotions, if we don't release them, they will surface in some way
Hmm.
eventually, through pain in certain areas, and then through chronic illnesses in certain organs. And certain emotions harbor a different frequency that also harbor certain areas in your body that is trapped with this emotion that's going to cause that pain or discomfort. And that's also aligned with certain physiological issues down the line where there are certain organs in your body because of the certain emotion that you're carrying, where you're not able to release that energy even through, let's say, your chakra systems. Where is it in your chakras that you are being blocked, which then causes different, because they're associated with different organs and functions in your body, that then again translate as to where it is in your body that you're going to feel it eventually, or it's going to show up as some form of dysfunction or some form of illness in that particular functioning organ. So to be able to release it through various ways, lots of different tools that you can do that through nature, through grounding, yoga, through exercise and movement, through somatic release, through massage, breath work, through meditation and visualization. It kind of going back to not creating these huge drastic changes in your life, but just take one little thing that you feel works for you and try to practice that, and be consistent with it, and you'll realize how far it can take you. And like you said, like you wouldn't, like you go back one day and be like, wow, this is a part of my lifestyle now. So um, we have the tools and resources, and they're all different for everyone. You get to feel with your own body, with your own sensation of what feels right for you. So um, and I think that's what I try to do as a practitioner, to figure out intuitively and empower people to make these small steps to these bigger goals that they have, especially if it does not serve for their highest purpose anymore. If it's an identity that they do not want to carry anymore. What is their new self going to look like, their highest self? So please release your emotions. If you have anyone that comes to mind when we talk about this, a parent, a family member, a sibling, a friend, that you're holding some form of negative emotion, you're only doing yourself a disservice. You know, we have this mantra in Hawaiian culture called Ho'oponopono, and you get to forgive, you get to give me a moment here. I'm sorry if I'm making this. I'm sorry if I'm getting the order wrong here, but it's I'm sorry, I forgive you, I love you, and uh, if you can forgive someone, you're really forgiving yourself, and you're really releasing your own blockages and emotions in your body. And you're going to allow yourself to live on and move on with your life. So if there's anyone that comes to mind, that person that comes to mind is in your mind for a reason. If you're not at a point where you can call them or write them or text them, just send them energy. Tell them that you forgive them. And, when you do that, you get to love yourself even more. You get to release and be able to maybe one day connect, if that's open for you, or if that's somewhere down the line, a goal you want to have, and a relationship that you want to harbor and foster again, because we're all here to connect. So do yourself a service and go ahead and release yourself. You'll feel a lot better. Cry, move, do what works for you.
Yeah, there's so many things there that you said that are worth touching on, and one of them is I think when you're talking about making that first step, we're talking about is changing our patterns, right? So a lot of the negativity that we have in our lives, sometimes it's totally even beyond our own consciousness or our sense of awareness. Is we have these negative patterns that sometimes have been established since we were little kids. And you're going through life and you have these negative patterns and you keep repeating them. They might be making you miserable. It might be like an addiction to suffering. But you're repeating these same things, even if it's just the food that you eat. But
Mm,
all the things that you do, it's over and over and over again. Well, the only way to really change that is to create a different pattern, and that's the first step is to do the first, your the first practice of the pattern. And so I
mm,
think that's what I hear from you, Daniel, from what you're saying about making those changes is to change your patterns. And then the next thing you know, you've established a pattern that's healthy, that's good for you, that's improving your life instead of making you feel worse, which so many of the things in our modern day world do, and it's hard to get away from. And I also just appreciate what you said in there. I think there's some gratitude in there from Monica and David as well about what you said about sending somebody positive energy, that maybe there's some negative vibes that's been going on, or some resentment, or or whatever's happening there. And I'm not even going to say too much other than I would say that it works. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm somebody who would have been skeptical about that before, but you're maybe we can talk about Reiki in a little bit, but I don't know that much about it, to be honest with you. But at one point, a book fell into my lap, and at two different times, two different segments of my life, I picked it up and went through a little bit of it and practiced a little bit. And one of the things that it kept having me do was for everything that I was trying to set up for myself, it would have me send out basically positive vibes to other people and other groups in within the world. And just having a practice of that doing that every day. I mean, what a significant blessing that was, not just for whatever I might be sending to the people, but like you said, for yourself. Because even when you won't forgive somebody and you're upset at them, you have a resentment towards them, it's not hurting them, it's hurting yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You're the one that you're keeping in the shackles over it all.
Yes.
Most people aren't going to be sitting over there at their house thinking, oh, Daniel hasn't forgiven me yet, oh no. Do you know what I'm saying? You're the one that's holding that inside, and it's holding you back, not the other person.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you're right. It goes back to your patterns of thinking, your thought. We've been programmed and conditioned all our lives. From 0 to 7, we were already pretty much programmed. Almost 80% of it is conditioned. And then go to 18 years old, about over 90% of our conditioning is already there. And so over these years, these patterns of thinking from a neuroscience perspective, it's created those connections, those same repeated connections, and they're strengthened, right, over these years of creating those connections and patterns. So in order to shift that, initially is first becoming aware of those patterns, is tuning in, being conscious of your unconscious, right? You're checking in with yourself daily. Is this the same old repeated pattern of the lower Daniel that I'm repeating? Or what is the new Daniel, this higher self of yours, going to transition to? And so you're going to start to replace that with a new thought, with your highest self. And that's what that's doing, is now weakening those stronger patterns and creating new patterns and new connections in your brain called neuroplasticity. You're creating these new pathways now for you to embody your new self. And that's truly shifting. That's first and foremost, is becoming aware, becoming conscious of your subconscious and your programming. And then once you do that, you get to associate that with different feelings, different emotions that come about. And then ultimately, hopefully, different behaviors and different choices that you make, and then which ultimately will provide a different outcome, right? So first, it's being aware and having that intention of what it is that no longer serves you anymore. What is it that you are going to replace that with to create a new emotion, to create a new definition of what that old pattern provided for you? Again, then to create some better emotions and better feelings to transition and translate into your behavior and out into the world of a new reality that you want to create. Because again, insanity is when you do the same thing over and over again, and you expect a different outcome. So, shifting, when you're first aware of that pattern, shift into your highest self, think about what it's going to replace that with. And it goes back to a lot of those tools that we talked about, like visualization, meditation, self-talk and mantras. And you'll get to, once you do that work, you'll really get to kind of peel the layers as what you're holding on to, where you're not showing up in your life, where you can be a better version of yourself in different relationships. So, you know, it's like it's also digging deep and doing the inner work of, why do I think this way? Why do I feel this way? How am I defining this that is probably something that isn't true that you're holding on to? And you get to have that choice, and you get to make that choice and be accountable and responsible for your own life and how you want to navigate this human experience moving forward.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I think one of the things that I wish everybody on earth would recognize um, is that you have the power to manifest your own reality. The way that you perceive the world is the way that you'll experience it. And that's not to put anything down. Like, different people have different conditions, especially when you're children, that you can't control.
Yes.
But even as adults, sometimes we're in a situation, you got a job, you got to pay the bills. So you can't just be like, F it, heading out, and going to start something new sometimes. Um, but when you start small and you build outward, like you can literally manifest your own reality. And whenever I'm feeling down, which is still, I mean, I'm not saying that I walk around like in this joyful sense in every moment of my life. I still wake up and feel the transgressions of the past and the burdens of the past sometimes. Um, but I think that I'm able to recognize at this point that that suffering is not me, and I'm able to kind of shake it off and realize that it doesn't reflect my reality. Um, and it's not an easy thing to do. So by no means am I saying you just flip a switch and then you've
Mm,
manifested your own reality. But I think the first thing is knowing that you can
mm,
and believing in the fact that you can. And I think so many of us are just closed off to it. Off to it. How many times do you hear, that's just the way that I am? How many people are thinking that all the time? I have a grandpa, I love him to death, but he's always exhibiting negative behavior sometimes, and then he'll be like all anxious and nervous. That's just the way that I am. But I'm like, it's the way that you are. That's because you set yourself up to be in that way. And when we can apply that to ourselves, that's when we can make real, meaningful change. Um, if there's any truth out there, and I say this to students all the time, if there's any truth out there that I know about, it's that you have we have the power to manifest our own realities. And so once you can get around that, then you can start making real significant changes and get out of those old patterns that you think that you're trapped in, that you believe that you're trapped in, but you're not. You can shake them, I promise you.
yes,
Uh,
it's so amazing.
we better let's get into this chat just a little bit. I feel like I've
Yeah.
been neglecting people, and then we'll move forward from there. Some we get too far away. I think David's going back. We're talking all the way about food and you know Alaska and Hawaii and whatnot. He says, I live on a remote island on the Aleutian chain, and there are a handful of people here that still just live off the land. They hunt seals, sea lions, harvest fish and berries. It's amazing to see. And I appreciate you sharing that, David. And I lived up in Barrow, Alaska, aka Utqiagvik, up on the Arctic Ocean with the Inupiaq. And I'm not much, to be honest with you, I'm not much for eating marine mammals. They don't taste good to me. But the way that the Inupiaq people go about harvesting and sharing is just a really beautiful thing. It's like a gift economy. They have every um, year after the whaling season in the spring, they'll have the festival called Nalukatut, and you're not allowed to sell anything. You just have to share the harvest. And I've been in other communities too, whether that's fruits and vegetables. Here in Hawaii, it's very culturally appropriate to give a gift. When you meet a neighbor, if you move to a new place and you meet a neighbor, 99% chance that neighbor's going to come back an hour later and bring you some gifts from the trees and with their garden in the backyard. You know what I mean? And
Absolutely.
so I think that kind of culture, not just a specific culture, but that kind of culture of harvesting from the land, subsisting from the land, giving back and making it reciprocal and kind of a gift economy. That's where I wish that we would go. If you know what I mean.
Yes, the land provides.
Mm.
Source provides for us. That's really cool. I never tried seals or sea lions. Nothing against um, taking one's life or taking an animal's life, but I do believe in this circle of life. Like even when we harvest and crop plants, if you think about it, we are killing thousands and thousands of insects and other beings there to crop harvest. So is it quantity versus quality of that type of animal of what we perceive, or are they all souls in their own right? So but again, it's the connection we have in giving grace to Mother Earth and nature, and knowing that this life was able to nourish us and provide for us. So, but yeah, I never thought that that was some form of cultural diet that they eat there. So it's amazing.
Oh, I think in Alaska, if you're going back in time, that's all that's what was there. You got half a, I mean, not literally half a year of darkness, but a half of a year of descent into mostly darkness, depending on where you're at. Some places like Utqiagvik would be 24 hours darkness, and so
Wow.
if they're not eating the whales and the seals, they're not eating anything. If you know what I'm saying, because
Mm.
talking about David's much further south, but they still have pretty harsh environments, and I'm sure they have a lot more opportunity with fish and things like that. But in areas the native folks ate what was available to them. You know what I mean?
Do you try them?
I've tried a few things, and I don't like the taste at all. I don't like the smell. I don't. it's not something for me. Um, what's interesting is like I've never known a kid who tries it and doesn't like it, like a
Really?
little kid, not like
Wow.
a teenager, but like
Right.
a little kid. Especially like muktuk, which is the whale blubber, the whale fat that they use. It's like a delicacy. Um, and I don't know that I've known like a native that doesn't like it, and I've definitely haven't known a child. The children, they love it for some reason. I think it's like it's very similar to have you seen them in maybe you as a little kid or seen one of your kids when they'll eat butter as a little kid, like
Mm-hmm.
just the butter tastes good to them, whereas you get older, it tastes kind of.
I like the taste.
You do? You
Mm-hmm.
like the just the butter?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. See, I
Yeah.
think I think it's a similar. I think there's more of a sea taste, an
Mm.
ocean taste to the whale blubber, but I think it's similar. You know
Wow.
what I'm saying? And
Wow.
um, they had to live off of that.
Sure.
The seal oil and whale blubber and stuff like that. That's what kept things lit up. That's what kept them warm.
Yeah. Huh. It's amazing.
So we got Jesse in here. Jesse says, "My parents never let me have processed sugar when I was little. As a teen, I went a little crazy with it. Nowadays, I feel better when I eat less and avoid it by making my own food at home, so I know the ingredients."
Yes.
I think also like what you were saying ties to what you were saying earlier, Daniel, is that you can like your kids, you can eliminate it and outlaw it, but they're going to try it at some point. They're going to go to their surely when they go to the birthday party down the street, they're going to have soda and juice and all kinds of things, right? And so it doesn't really work just to like outlaw it. You have to. I like to look at it as like being in an open conversation with them, modeling the positive behavior, but then it being an open conversation about literally what does it do to you? Why shouldn't you drink it? Just be honest about it.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny because now they're aware, so they'll look at and read ingredients, and truly they'll make their own choices. Like they'll see it
Mm-hmm.
and make their own choices, and then again, when I tell them it's okay, you're aware of it, but feel good eating it, knowing that you also have other healthier options that you are, fostering throughout the day. So, again, it's not about trying to shame or guilt them for even making these choices, but just bringing awareness and role modeling our choices as adults. And ultimately, they get to make their own. Yeah.
And the norm out there is not that. The norm out there is Doritos and soda and some pizza and all. I've enjoyed all of those things at different times. Don't get me wrong. Um, but I think that looking at it from a more macro level, the issue is cultural. It's the culture of what's normal. We read the
Mm,
myth. Have you ever heard of the Myth of Normal by Dr. Gabor Mate?
mm,
I pass that on to you. But it's a big book. But the essential thesis is just that we've been hoodwinked. We've been duped into thinking that all these things are normal. It's normal to be miserable. It's normal to
mm,
be unhealthy. It's normal to eat these kind of foods. When instead, no, it's not normal. This is something very, very new
mm.
to the world. You know what I mean? For us to behave in this way. Even
Yes.
not that long ago, if you're looking at our grandparents, they were eating something much different
Yes.
than we were today. And they're going to be many degrees of separation closer to whatever food that they're eating than we are today.
Yes. Yeah. This is the new norm, right? Like we weren't doing this hundreds, thousands of years ago. And to create a cultural shift or change, like I've always thought, and maybe you guys would know. Okay, let's throw some ideas out there. Community, just when we go to birthday parties, they're like the worst. You have fruit juices, you have sugar, you have a birthday cake. Like what would be better alternatives, and we can go a little farther than fruits, maybe something that that the kids will enjoy, but just a little healthier. Or maybe we can start to adopt different baked goods or cakes that with more conscious ingredients that we don't have to spike their blood sugar levels. And I think more and more there are treats out there that are that people are baking. We do have a friend from Maui. She sends us non-spiked, gluten-free treats, and they taste amazing. And there's a bunch of protein and fat and no sugar at all, and we can eat it, welcomely, with knowing that this is gonna nourish our bodies. So, any ideas there? I know fruits is, of course, amazing. That's nature's and Mother Nature's sugar. So, but if you can throw any out there, we'd be welcome to kind of hear them.
Alice says black bean brownies. I know Alice probably got a whole
Ooh,
has a whole host of foods
Interesting.
like this in her tool belt.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think, one of the things that I've learned of being a parent is so you have all these things that are simulated fruit, fruity pebbles, tricks for kids, Starburst, Skittles. There are all these things that are, supposed to represent a fruit. So since I've been away from the sugar, the actual fruit tastes 1,000 times better. And my kids would back that. Their
Mm,
behavior would back that. They would absolutely prefer a nice, tasty orange to an orange flavored piece of candy or whatever it is,
yes.
strawberry, blueberry, raspberry, whatever it is, banana. And I think that, like, again, our culture is so backwards in this regard. Is that we've tricked ourselves to even thinking that kids would like this better than this better, but it's not true. That's why I like we talk about the movie theaters. That's a place where unhealthy behavior comes in, right? The popcorn, everything in there, candy, the hot dog, everything in there is not good for you. Why is there no? Why does it not exist? Why is there no movie theater that I know about, anyways, that offers you a cup of blueberries as an option? Isn't that weird that there just doesn't exist? Not one place in the United States that I know of that you could do something like that. Why you go to a bowling alley? Why does it have to be all reinforced with unhealthy food? Why wouldn't you be able to? It just doesn't make sense to me. It makes sense why some might be that way, but it doesn't make sense why it's 100% that way.
Wow.
Chuck E. Cheese. Go to Chuck E. Cheese. You think they got blueberries available? I doubt it. They got soda though.
Chucky. Oh man, you're right. Like, how do we? And I think it comes down to again old systems that are not serving us anymore. So how can we as individuals take control and empower ourselves to make these choices? But you know, what if they created a franchise like that?
Yeah.
What if they created birthday goods that are alternative to create a more conscious choice? A brand of that sort for kids, specifically for gatherings and whatnot. Or like you said, even at movies. Why not have some third party connoisseur of healthier treats, and they're gonna now put it in all big box movie retail or theaters out there. Like, we can get so creative, out there. But again, it takes first making that choice for yourself, right? We can't control anything else out there in the external. We can only control ourselves and our choices, and it starts from there.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's one of those things, like I said, that you can't control as far as the world is a certain way, and you can't, you might not be able to control what they got at the movie theater. You may have to manipulate it a little bit. You have to put the blueberries in your pocket and sneak them in. Um, anyways, Monica asks, do you all see a connection between eating clean and the body allowing more space for clearing trauma and being more open energetically? That's a great question.
That is a great question. And yes, we're vessels. We are This physical body of ours is connected to our mental and spirit bodies as well. So from an energetic standpoint, the cleaner we eat, and there is a perspective out there that our bodies now are transforming in a sense of we are receiving new codes and genetic makeups through our sun that's being downloaded within our own makeup, within our own um, physical bodies. And so there's a perspective that people are now having to change their diets even more and more because they're starting to see it come up, and not in a good way. You're starting to have other issues that now is really associated with certain foods because now you're becoming much more highly sensitive. And so in a sense of going out of this previous old dense world and physical world into higher dimensions, we are starting to feel that we need to eat more highly energetic foods for us to ascend, for us to clear our minds, for us to clear our bodies, and for our highest purpose and our highest higher selves. So that definitely is connected in a sense. And some people, and there's so many perspectives out there. Again, not to shame anybody, but Some feel that plants and fruits are the way of eating. And as you continue to create a healthier lifestyle, some people, and again, there's so many perspectives, like even blood type. There's a philosophy on the different blood types that allow you to eat certain foods or that are right for you energetically as well. There's also different ideas of digestion according to our specific body energy mechanics and our framework. Um, and then going back to Western Mediterranean or even Eastern medicine types of traditional Chinese medicine foods, or even the Ayurvedics or Indian philosophy. So again, it goes back to what is right for you, and you can only do that through experimentation and validating for yourselves how you're feeling. Um, but yes, to kind of answer your question, we want to become lighter bodies, and we're transitioning to a point of eating less dense foods, and again, all that processed stuff and sugar definitely does not serve a role for us evolving.
Yeah, and I'd just add that I think even on a common sense logical perspective that uh, if you eat better, you're going to feel better, which is going to make you more able and available and create more space for you to kind of ditch some of those negative things that are holding you back and be more open to more positive things. If you're feeling bad physically, obviously that's going to contribute to how you feel in other areas. And so I'd say that it all affects each other, and it definitely opens up more pathways for sure. Let's see, we got some more in here. David was back here talking about, I think back when we were talking about forgiveness and all of that, and he said, this is something that I've needed to do with my mom. I haven't had a relationship with her for about 8 years. But after hearing you guys talk, I need to let her know I forgive her for all she has done so I can heal myself, even though I have no desire to have a relationship with her again. He said, I'll come to that next comment in a minute. Um, but David, it's so powerful to me that you said that. And I don't have the exact same situation with my mother, but I had a conflict that was uh, some resentment and some things that I've been holding on to forever with my mom and my dad. But um, my mom specifically, I what changed it for me was I wrote her this letter that I wanted to read to her, and I don't want to say too much because it's personal between me and my mom. But I wrote all these things I just wanted to know that I feel like she didn't know about my life and my experience. And honestly, she didn't respond too much. She just kind of, I think it was a lot for her to take in. And so what I hoped for, I necessarily didn't achieve in that moment. But by me reading that and then getting rid of that letter afterwards, I think I burned it. Man, it's never bothered me since. But stuff that I held on to, like I didn't even deliberately make the choice to let it go. I just did something symbolically and wanted something different out of it. But by letting it go, it opened it out. The relationship with my mom has just improved so much in the way that I'm able to operate with her. And one of the big things that I got out of that as well was that I started looking at her from a sense of empathy. Like she was a teenage mom who, maybe had problems with her own parents when she was a kid, if that makes sense, and so on. So I started to look at it from having empathy for her and who she is and what the experience that she had. And instead of like needing her to be a certain way or to change or to do this, I just let it go, man. And it's just been the best, most privileged thing, beneficial thing for me as far as a relationship goes that I could ever ask for. And I realized that the biggest thing that was holding it back was not what happened to me as a child or my experience as a child, but that I was so addicted to holding on to it. It was a part of my identity. But if I want to be happy and successful, then I can't identify as a wounded soul, if you know what I'm saying. I had to let it go. So I'm really glad you brought that up, David. You and I are connected in a lot of ways in that regard.
Yeah, that was beautiful. That was beautiful to share that openly and be vulnerable and understand where you can, you can change the relationship, or at least be able to share your feelings for you to release. Again, that is so beautiful to be able to, experience. Amazing, David.
Yeah, I hope to hear more about it moving forward, like some of the other things, David. So just want to say I appreciate you. And I think going back to talking about Alaska and food, he says, I'm right there with you. I think talking about not eating marine mammals, but he says, I'll eat halibut and that's about it. My mother-in-law gives me shit about not wanting to eat the sea lion or the seal. And they utilize everything that they harvest. That's true. They utilize everything. Like they get upset if you throw away the heads of things because
Mm.
they utilize everything. So much respect to the different native folks in Alaska, native peoples in Alaska that are that are making use of everything. And I think it's all right, David, that your mother-in-law gives you shit about it because, hey, we're when you go to somebody else's land and somebody else's place, they got a right to give us a little bit of shit when we don't conform to to their way of being. And I think most of it's done in good humor and positive vibes. Let's see, what else did we miss in here? Renee says sea lion ribs are very rich, and they
Wow.
have to do a lot of soaking before they are ready to prepare to eat. I don't know a lot about it, but I do know, yeah, that I've seen the level of preparation sometimes that goes into it. Um, Going back to our comments about eating and what we do with our kids and Chuck E. Cheese, Renee says I always prefer to do things like trampoline parks or swimming parties. We did a lot of cheese sticks and fruit. Definitely could do worse than that, Renee. It's a good work, and I think it's one of the blessings too. People in Alaska feel this way, especially in the summer. But being here on the islands in the Aina, like it's such a privilege and a benefit just to be able to step outside any day of the year. We live a little bit
Mm.
away from the water, not too far away from the water, but a little bit away from a traditional kind of beach.
Mm.
Um, but most people live a couple plane rides away, so it's just a real benefit and a pleasure, especially with the children, for them to have the space out here. But like, if you want to have a party or a birthday party, well, there's plenty of beaches to choose from. You know what I'm saying? And you couldn't ask for anything better than that.
Yeah. Again, just to be out in nature is so healing as well. Just the connection you can have, and so we are so grateful to be here.
Yeah, and maybe you can mention on this too, because it's something that I've expressed interest and dabbled in a little bit. But Monica says something about potentially less in general, and people who fast or intermittently fast allows the body to clear
Mm.
more. And so I've only really been fasting in my level of consciousness for the last couple of years, and I've tried a couple like bigger fasts on my own. And the most recent one, I did this bone broth where I just drank bone broth 3 4 times a day with some coconut oil or something in there, and I was really really hungry most of the time. But I would tell you, when I came out of that, it's the best I've ever eaten in my life. For
Mm.
that period of time after there, like I just only wanted to consume stuff that made me feel good, that was healthy, all of that. So I know that's not necessarily intermittent fasting, but just allowing my body to reset in such a way and get out of, so like mention the habits and the patterns, get away from some of those and reset them.
Yes.
And don't get me wrong, it's also very easy to get back on the negative patterns and the negative habits, but it's really beneficial to me. But what can you tell us about fasting and intermittent fasting?
Yeah. I practice intermittent fasting and fasting throughout my weeks. I try to intermittently fast twice a week. That's about 18 hours. But it truly is releasing and detoxing your body. You're cleansing it of all the toxins that, again, that do not serve for the most optimum function. So when you fast for 24 hours, you start to heal your gut. You start to create stem cells in your gut that starts to create a more alkaline and microbiome for you to digest appropriately and absorb the nutrients more appropriately, as you go through the digestion process. Um, if you start to fast up to 36 and even 72 hours, you start to create new stem cells where now you are, scanning your body of old cells and debris, where these called macrophages or different cells that come into your body and clean up all that junk and waste that, again, is just only creating space for new cells to continue to allow you to thrive in your human body. So there's a lot of benefits to fasting. And again, going back to things like what has been commercialized or typically, or we want to say normal, we're not meant to be eating constantly throughout the day. We're just putting a lot more work on our system to be able to digest those foods. And we create this buildup for us to now have to cleanse and detox more. So yeah, I think there are a lot of benefits to fasting, and there's lots of tools and tips and tricks to kind of help with that process, because initially it's hard. Your brain chemistry, and the communication from your gut to your brain is going to tell you you think you need food, but truly you don't. But those chemical signals are telling you you should eat something, or you should eat a snack, or you should get sugar, whatever it is you are in your process of your nutritional intake. But if you can kind of overcome some of those initial cravings, you start to feel less and less of that, and really feel the benefits of feeling better.
Have we been duped into an addiction to food? And I say that in the sense of like going back to tobacco companies taking over tobacco, big dogs taking over the food industry. So if you imagine if they have all the money in the world at their capacity, all the science in the world, they can infiltrate what they teach us in the school as a kid, things like that, 3 meals a day type of thing, the food groups and things like that.
Mm.
But it seems to me that we've been duped into thinking that you, without this particular meal, without this, without that, that you won't feel good, that you won't, I don't know, be well, for example. Um, when in the reality, if we were to go back again, not that long ago in human history, people would have been had to be a little bit more particular about, maybe not particular about the times that they ate, but it would be a lot more connected to the reality of their surroundings and the natural world around them. I doubt that they sat down at 8 a.m., 12 p.m., and 6 p.m. every day, with the food they picked up from Kroger.
Yeah, yeah, the food pyramid. That's what comes to mind for me. You have all those grains and sugars and processed stuff on the bottom, and excess sugar in your body will come up in different illnesses. That's to really generalize it. So, um, but again, like, make the choices that's right for you, whatever journey you're on, whatever path you're on, and you have the choice. And I think that's what people are now starting to realize is they need to empower themselves and not rely on big systems to tell them what to do, not rely on your doctor telling you what pills to take, and doing your own due diligence and research. Is this right for me? Does this feel right for me? And then making those choices for yourself. Not to mention, not to say that there are professionals out there who are willing to help you, but I think we're at a point where big systems that do not serve the greater good of humanity and for yourself, we have to take empowerment and make those choices ourselves and not rely on.
Absolutely. And I think that's going back to it is I think that many of us don't know that we have the choice. It's not, right there in front of us. And so you have to create that. You have to create that awareness that you have a choice in things. Viviana says, what a deep and open heart conversation. I agree that forgiveness heals you. And I started the same way with my mom. And now I have so much love and compassion for her because we all have been conditioned through our childhood, and our parents only did the best that they could with the tools that they had. Very beautifully said.
I just want to send my love to Viviana. That's a beautiful message. And you're right. Not to even forgive them in a sense, because they didn't do anything wrong. They truly did the best with what they had. And even if it really doesn't even look right, doesn't even, in terms of the spectrum of how that could have occurred, as a child, but it served a purpose. It does shape you with who you are today, or it can shape you if you choose to take that as lessons and forgive, and or just know that they did their best and allow yourself to take those lessons and be your best self. So I just want to say my love you, mom and dad. I love you guys so much. You guys are in my hearts, and you guys have done such an amazing job, and I appreciate you both. And yeah, just a quick shout out to my parents.
I appreciate that. And I think what's cool about having these kind of conversations, these dialogues, is that just in this small group, we got three of us, me, David, Viviana, that all talk about similar experiences with our mother. And when we talk about those things, we're giving people permission. We're liberating them from maybe not necessarily liberating them, but giving them permission to liberate themselves from the same conflicts that they have. and letting them go. And so it's important for us to talk about these things and finding the unity and the commonalities that we have in that regard, if you know what I mean. So just much respect to everybody in here, and especially Viviana and David for the things that that you went through. And hopefully there's somebody out there that hears it that can make that same move and and just like I said, let it go. Well, I feel like the very thing that we talked about before, we didn't do. We didn't get to know you at all. We just kind of jumped right into it. And so I'm curious, Daniel, like if you were to describe yourself, who you are with a little storytelling in there, what would you say?
Mm, gosh, I think I feel what I did share really embodied the essence of who I am. I'm about love. I'm about compassion. I'm about kindness and respect for a new world of communication, a new world of relationships, a new world of connection with our land and our inner souls. But from a professional level, I'm a quantum physical therapist. I help people transform their physical bodies with creating new identities for themselves, with how they view themselves, and finding out what are the limitations that they are having that's not allowing them to be their most highest self. Through a lot of the techniques and tools we kind of discussed is forgiveness, understanding these patterns through neuroscience, creating your reality of your old version of you that doesn't serve to a new version. What is your highest physical body that carries this beautiful vessel of yours that you love look like and feel like? And my background of being a personal trainer, strength and conditioning specialist, a doctor of physical therapy, doing energy work, with this knowledge that I have through movement and exercise science and rehab creates the musculoskeletal framework for you to thrive in a mobility framework. Um, but I think more so than physical changes, I think we talked about a lot of this is that change comes from within. That change comes internally with how you view yourself. Because I hope that the the clients and patients and the people I connect with, what I'm trying to do is we have to learn to love ourselves. We have to remember who we are. And that first comes with being vulnerable, that comes with doing the inner work, that comes with releasing any negative emotions and with intention and love and trust. And if you can see the world and view yourself that way, you can create that reality.
Yeah, that's a beautiful way to describe yourself. Most people start at, I was born here and did this and did that. So
Mm,
I appreciate it because I always talk to my students as well about, it's not about like who we were or who we are, it's who are we becoming. And the way that you described yourself felt like it was something that's still in progress and not something
mm,
that's, already forged in stone, if you know what I mean. Well, being that, you kind of operate and think outside of the mainstream status quo ideas of health and wellness, how do you think maybe how have you negotiated with conflict when you've experienced conflict in the, more mainstream professionals or organizations? I think you talked about this a little bit when we first met.
mm,
And how have you found that balance?
mm. Yeah, so I worked in various settings in big hospital organizations. I was more recently at Queens North Hawaii Community Hospital as a physical therapist and rehab manager for over 5 years. And not to shed any negativity, but to just share that, again, going back to big systems, it just didn't serve me and my purpose anymore, didn't align with my values as how I want to see my patients and clients, to see them as a whole person and not necessarily diagnosis codes and how to bill. Um, so it really just was a evolutionary phase of how I want to view my patients and treat them in a way that I think is way more fulfilling from a whole body standpoint. And not only through the body, but through the emotional, mental, spiritual aspect as well. So, in terms of conflict, it all served a purpose. It allowed me to reflect even further of what didn't serve for me anymore. And If it triggered me in any way, I needed to dig deeper and realize, wow, I'm feeling this way because of this, and part of that, I'd say disagreements with the systemic ways through the hospital bureaucracy, for example, it just kept giving me signs that it was time for me to move on. I couldn't be happier. I think the connections I get to make with patients is deeper than a session, you know, and I'm really truly appreciative of what I get to continue to do, um, to not only empower people, because in that form of empowerment and bettering oneself with my tools, it fulfills me. It really brings me joy and gratitude to see them win, to see them make these choices, these conscious awareness of who they really want to become.
Yeah, you just described exactly why I love working with students, if you know what I mean. It's all about the pleasure. I mean, it's because it's hard work that, isn't always recognized in other ways. And so when I have students I see the growth in them, which is so often, it's always ongoing. And I'm like, wow, you are
Yes.
not the same person that when we first introduced ourselves to each other, you're not the same person. And it's beautiful, you know what I mean? To see their growth and the person to see who they're becoming in progress, but to see who they become out of it all. It's truly a blessing. I think something that's relevant here is a lot of the folks that are going to be watching this and listen to this are social work students or obviously social work practitioners. And although you're not in the professional field of social work, you are doing social work. And I think you face some of the same dilemmas or conflicts that some might, because I think a lot of folks will come into social work and they have these ideas or these imaginations about things they want to do and change they want to inflict. And then they get into the field and they realize that they're trying to put into this box, if that
Mm.
makes sense. And you're supposed to do this. You want to choose this pathway or this box or this box. And they realize, like, hey, all these things that I wanted to do, like, they pretty much make it impossible, or they make you think it's impossible at least, because insurance won't pay for this, or this is not within, you know, with within this or this, organizational competency or something like that. And I think it's truly inspirational to see that to have the courage to kind of buck that a little bit and find and navigate your own path. And I feel like I've done that in a different way, although I'm still, involved in an institution and things like that. I have kind of forged my own path in that regard, and I'm able to operate as myself. What would you say to social work students that are navigating that conflict, whether they're getting into
Mm.
education and they're kind of becoming disillusioned? I know there's some of you in here, um, by the way that things are versus the way that they hoped, thought, or imagined it would be. And how can you find the imagination, the courage, the willingness to make that decision to, go out and make your own road by
Mm.
walking it?
Yeah, great question. I think this pertains to any profession. First of all, if you're thinking about an organization, does that organization align with the mission or vision that you see, that allows you to practice in a way that fulfills you, that allows you to do the work for the greater good, for humanity, for society? And you know, sometimes the people you work with can allow you to embody that essence of that work that you're committed to. And to go back, it's there are lots of great things that hospitals and organizations are doing, and it just wasn't right for me at the time in my evolutionary process. So, not to shed so much negativity in that sense, but you have to find what's right for you in the environment you're in the process you're in, the stage you're in. So, um, again, if you can feel and think about what that's gonna look like, what that's gonna feel like, if you can start to visualize and meditate and manifest what it is that you want as a new social worker out there in the field, then you get to create that reality, however it may look. And don't limit yourselves, because you might think a certain way instead of putting yourself in a box. The universe will bring so many different opportunities that you never even imagined that fits all your needs and fits everything that you've asked for from source. So remember that you are source of all abundance and you get to create that. So navigate it with yourself, with your inner compass, with love and honesty and truth, and respecting yourself, of course, respecting yourself and the choices you make. And that goes with any profession.
And I would add to that, have a value system in place. Know what your values are and what works for you and what doesn't work. And when we have those things clearly defined and thought out, then we're much able more and put them down on paper or talk to people about them. Then we're much more likely to be able to manifest them in our lives and uphold them when we run into conflict and things like that. And when you were talking about like mainstream health, social work, whatever, and then doing things differently, it reminds me of when my wife was giving birth to our oldest, Zay Koa, and we were in that we had obviously when you're going through something like that, it's all new and you don't know. There's no true blueprint or handbook on how to do it. But we were really thoughtful about it, and we created this birth plan. And we got this hypnobirthing thing for Alicia, and we knew what we wanted. And that may have changed now, back from back then. But we wrote out this elaborate birth plan, and we get in there to the hospital, and things just don't go as we had thought that they would. We wanted it to be a natural birth, and for the most part, it was. But she had some high blood pressure, and
Mm.
so they induced her early. So she had to get the what's it called, the something tonin. I can't think of what it's called. Anyways, kind of induces the pregnancy, and then we had a nurse in there, the first nurse, and she was very thoughtful and like read our birth plan and was talking to us about it. And then we had like an old head nurse, like the old, and she was an older woman, a little bit hard headed, and she didn't give a shit about our birth plan, didn't
Mm.
give a shit about anything that we said. And so time goes by. I'm not going to go into all the details. We had all these problems when not necessarily with like the kid or the actual birth, but with the way that we were being treated and interacted with. And it's funny, I wrote old comrade of mine, he's passed on since then, but he was in prison. And they had email, so I was surprised that he could respond so instantly. But I didn't know who else to talk to, and I was just sitting there, and I got this email from him, so I wrote him back, and I was like, "This is what I'm experiencing." And he's like, "Look, Ace," he wrote me back pretty quick within that day, and he's like, "Look, Ace, what you have to understand is that it's not necessarily that their way is the wrong way, the way that they're doing it. The issue here, as I see it, is that they're not acknowledging that there are other ways to do things as well. And so, yeah, going into a hospital and adhering to everything and doing things the way that they want could be a good way and it could work. But everybody's not the same and everybody has different needs. Um, and what you need to do, Ace, is you need to be assertive and you need to stand up for yourself and just don't be mean or reactionary. Just be assertive and stand up for yourself and let them know what you need." And ever since then, I've always been assertive and just very confident in the way that I've asserted myself in those situations. And almost every time they acquiesce and they do what I need them to do, if that makes sense. With both of the other children that we had, they wanted to do other things. And I was like, hey, actually, let's think about it like this. And this is what we want. And every time they were like, well, you guys are really weird, but okay, you can, you can do it. So, um, again, that's what I think I learned from my old friend, my old comrade Delbert, was that it's not saying that the hospital or the mainstream way is wrong. It's just saying that they're not acknowledging that there are other ways to do things as well. And our society kind of, I use that word, hoodwinks us again, or gets us to think a certain way, that there is only one way to have a proper childbirth, or only one way to do physical therapy, or only one way to do social work. And that's their way. And that's not true. People have been doing this kind of stuff for, time immemorial.
Mm.
And there are many healthy and positive ways to do all different things. And so I like what you also said, is finding your way, your authentic way. It's not the same. And so for all my social workers and future social workers out there, that's my advice, is make your own road, make it by walking it, and make sure it adheres to who you are. Not even necessarily who you might think you are at first, but like really get down in the nitty gritty and know who you are. So somebody asks you about your values or ask you why you do something, and you can answer them and you're confident about it. And that will typically get you exactly what you need in most situations. But Danny, we've been talking for a long time now. I feel like I always say that the measure of a good conversation, a good dialogue, is that time can go by and you feel like you could
Mm.
talk all day and you don't know how much time is eclipsed. And I feel like
1133. Love it.
11:33, 1133. I feel like we could, go deeper on so many different topics, and so I hope that we continue this dialogue and discussion and the relationship that we have started to build. And I want to leave it up to you. What's your last words? What did we not talk about that you wanted to express on here?
Oh man, I think, you know, what was said and shared was needed to be said, and whoever was here to listen will receive that messages that we were able to share from our hearts, from our truth. And I think we could leave it at that. What you ended with was beautifully said, and I appreciate you and I love you. And just want to give you a hug here, man. Thank you.
Appreciate you, brother. I appreciate everybody that came to the live recording and everybody that will listen to it afterwards. These discussions and dialogues are always better with you involved within them. And I want to express gratitude for just the life that I have. And one thing that I always kind of reiterate about podcasting is that it starts off as one thing, and then over time, the greatest thing that comes out of it is not that you made these podcasts or this or that. It's that you find that you're meeting all these people and you're creating these just amazing relationships. It's very relational, you know what I'm saying? And so, like I said, I think I've done about 100 episodes. So give or take, I've had a few people on more than once, but give or take, I've connected with 100 people all around the globe that for the most part, most of them have shown me love, kindness, reciprocity. I've learned from them. They've learned from me. We've gotten students involved. We've got the audience involved. And it's more of a beautiful thing than I can even reflect on. So I just wanted to say thanks for giving me this opportunity to be here and have these conversations and these discussions. And, thank you to you, Daniel, for giving us your time, your wisdom, your energy, um, sharing what's on your heart, talking to us from the heart. Not everybody is able to do that. Um, and so I just wanted to express gratitude for, how you've led us into your life and shared this, the beautiful Aina and the home here, the Hale. And just thanks for being you, man. That's the best thing that I could say, I think, is thanks for being you and thanks for spreading the energy out there. We're all doing it a little bit differently. Um, but hey, sometimes the world gets me down on the way that things are going and the way I see people talking to each other and not listening to each other. But man, sometimes it sure gives me hope in the conversations and the relationships that I'm building. And I see what other people are doing and what
Yes.
we can do. So yeah, thank you, man. Thanks for being you.
Thank you. Mutually. Thank you.
All right, brother. All right, everybody, take care. Peace. And we'll see you on the next one.
Aloha.